All right, everyone. Welcome. This is Damon from the Faces of Business. I am so excited for our guest today because we have Erika Andresen with us here today from EaaS Consulting. And we are going to be talking about building resilient operations with business continuity planning. Erika, awesome having you here today.
Thank you for having me, Damon, and thank you for everybody who is tuning in and listening.
Yeah, it's going to be fun because a lot of people have probably not thought a lot about business continuity planning, but today we're going to learn some of the basic things, the reasons why, I hope, and some of the things you're helping people with.
Yeah, it's funny when you gave the little brief intro, I was wondering how many people actually understood any of what you said.
Yeah. Yes. Well, let's start there. So, what is business continuity planning? So, someone that is listening first time today, what would they find out about it?
So I think the easiest way to describe it is a practice that sets you up for success. It is there to prepare you for meeting any type of disruption or interruption, large or small, that will impact your operations. So when that does happen, you get back to operations, and it depends on what state, like a diluted state or your normal operations. But at the end of the day, you're still making money, and you're doing it in a way that's cheaper, easier, and more quickly than your competitors are doing it. So, my catchphrase is I keep your doors open and cash flowing. I enable you to keep making money regardless of what happens.
Yeah. Yep. And it is. I've been through a couple natural disasters. One was a tornado that took down the power system in a place where there were over 100 people working in the facility that I was responsible for. And then I also had an earthquake that stopped us for a few days in another one. And these are things that, if you're prepared for them, it can be a lot less disruptive. That's for sure.
Right. And I don't want to just stick on, I know some people, and I purposely say disruptions or interruptions. I used to say disasters and disruptions because most people stop listening at disasters and think just natural disasters, but it is so much more. It is also man-made disasters, like
Yep.
an active shooter, perchance, or a cyber attack. And if it's a disruption, it could be a key piece of machinery not working. It can be going viral overnight. It can be the entire warehouse winning Powerball and quitting the next day. So there are a whole lot of hiccups that will give you the worst headache ever in your business if you're not ready for them.
Yes. And I was just laughing because I've had several of those, at least with businesses I know of or businesses that I've been in. When you talk about critical equipment, and that's a huge one, and you talk about cyber attack. We had someone in our industry one time that recently it just about put them out of business. I mean, literally, I don't know if they're going to survive. And because it doesn't happen just to big businesses anymore with the cyber attacks.
No. Actually, it's always the smaller businesses are actually the bigger target. You would think that's the converse because like the bigger targets have more money, but they also, because they have more money, they're spending more money on their cyber infrastructure. Smaller guys are not spending any money on it, so it's basically shooting fish in a barrel for the cyber criminals at that point. Yeah. And I want to give a funny fact. So when it comes to like key piece of machinery not working or breaking down, the majority of those instances happen when somebody comes in to fix the machine or do some kind of warranty thing because they don't know certain aspects of the machinery, how it works within that actual area. Like they'll leave a wrench behind, they'll do something, and it's usually the person who's there to try to maintain it that winds up screwing it up. So like you think you're doing the right stuff, but even at that point, you may wind up coming face to face with you like, oh God, how are we going to operate? Like I tried to do all the right things and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm. So, Erika, what really piqued your interest and got you into business continuity planning as a career choice?
Okay, so when I was in the military, I was doing a lot of risk analysis for missions, especially when I was in Afghanistan. And part of that risk analysis was most likely, least likely, and most deadly course of action, deadly to us because we'd be killed. At the same time, I was reading a business review article, as you do in your downtime, and it was about businesses that suffered through Superstorm Sandy, and they were all answering the same questions. The final question was, what are you doing to prepare for next time? And every single one of them, except one, said, "Oh, this won't happen again." And because I was in this risk, mindset, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"God, they're so wrong. They're so wrong." And after that deployment, I was home. I was stationed at that point in the Boston area, and I was walking down the street, and there was a restaurant that I liked a lot that had closed. And I said, "Oh no, they closed." And my buddy who was with me, he's like, "So what? They sucked." I go, "No, somebody's dream died, and everybody who works for that person now has to go home and say, I don't have a paycheck to pay for my bills, my rent, food,
Yeah.
whatever." And I was like, that doesn't have to happen. And not just did that happen to the dreamer and their employees, but also the community lost a place that,
Mm-hmm.
I now don't have that as an option to go to. And I think at the end of the day, everybody has the right to have a good life, which includes paying for your necessities, but also buying things that enhances your life and makes your life worth living. And you get that by having a paycheck, and you pay for those things from other businesses who then have money to pay their employees who do the
Mm-hmm.
same. It's a beautiful cycle to be part of. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that is cool. And you are right that so many businesses, something will happen and they'll say, well, that's a one-off. And I mean, let's look at the hurricane situation in the Gulf Coast now. It's not every year, but it seems like we do get hit with hurricanes from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And it does cause a fair amount of damage. And we need to be ready for it. This just happens. These things happen. Economic. I mean, I've worked in the oil field services industry for a number of years now, and you can see the boom bust cycles of just the price of oil, how that used to be, and how the whole industry, I believe, it has really gotten a lot smarter over the last 3 or 4 decades
Mm-hmm.
of being, okay, we're not going to go crazy when the oil price goes up as much as we did before. We might go a little bit, but we're going wild and then coming back down when it reduces, just because of these kind of the economic risks that it just killed a lot of people.
Right. And you said that, hurricanes happen not every year, but they do. It's just not maybe the area you live in. They're not happening every
Yes,
year.
that's true.
And then you look at last year, Helene came, and then 2 weeks later in Florida, specifically, the same exact spot was hit by Milton.
Yeah.
And like a horrible 1-2 punch. And I talk a lot about this because I'm also a professor of emergency management. I tell my students, there was one example I was giving from September 11th. It sounds convoluted, but there is a point where at the time he was the dean of the law school, who's going to be the president of NYU, and he was like, we were concentrating on what had happened that day, but what may come next week. And the student said to me, "Well, I think that's really bad because you should concentrate on what's happening." And I said, "No, I'll tell you why that's a bad idea. Because, and I know this from the military too, when you are focusing just on what's happening and not what can happen, then you're missing what else is there. And the thing that wants to intentionally attack you wants to get you when you're on your knees, so you never get up.
Yeah.
Not you're healed and like, okay, now we'll come back to you again." And it's the same kind of theory, even with Mother Nature. It's not like Mother Nature's doing this intentionally, but you don't even have the opportunity to get back on your feet yet, and you get hit again. It's very devastating to a community.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind, just the economic loss, like one after the other. Like, how much more can we take?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about this a little bit, because we're kind of folding into, you've written a couple books.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the first one, and let's talk about the second one, and let's go through them a little.
Okay. Yeah. The first one, it was advised to me to write it as a way to increase my eminence. And I was listening, and it sounded like it was going to be an academic book and with case studies. And I didn't really want to write that book, let alone read that book. And at the time, I just finished teaching my first semester, University of Texas at El Paso, the emergency management. And the students said, "We really like you as a professor because you don't talk like a professor." And I was like, okay. And I was like, you know what? I want to write my book this way. I want it to be readable. And I started doing marketing research for that book. And I saw all other business continuity books were written by other professionals for professionals. And I'm like, well, who is this helping? So I decided for the business owners who cannot afford to invest in business continuity, I'd give them a leg up. So that book is called How to Not Kill Your Business. And it's got blood spots on the corner, on the cover, because
Nice.
That's how I designed that. And it's really just a very conversational way to talk about business continuity and the various types of disasters and disruptions, so you actually understand. There's a worksheet at the back that you can download at your business continuity plan started, it makes you go through a lot of questions and think you're like, well, this, I can't, I learned about this, but I don't think I can do this. You can, trust me, you can. You're not too small to do this. And then the second book, I wasn't planning on writing a second book, but I live in Asheville and was here for Helene, and I saw all the destruction that happened both to businesses and the community. And people were just so angry about a lot. And some of it was rightful anger. But I was looking, I was like, y'all wouldn't be so mad if you knew how this worked. Like, people were screaming within 24 hours later, like, where's FEMA? And I'm like, they're not showing up till at least Monday, because I know how the process worked. So I decided to write that book to help people, regardless of whether or not you have a business continuity plan, all the things that are going to hit you side, front, back in a disaster if you're not prepared for it. And that's when the shit hits the fan. So now I have fans on my cover instead of blood.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good choice of thing to put on the cover. And I had a lot of people say, like, the first one is great because it's a how-to. This one is great because it's a really what you need to know. It is a survival guide.
Yeah.
And they're both on Amazon.
All right, great. And we'll get the links in the post for that too. So the second book, When the Shit Hits the Fan, mm-hmm. What are some of the things that are going to impact us in a situation that we're totally not expecting?
So I think two things I would talk about. First is what help you can expect from outside. And I'll tell you almost none. Don't expect there to be help. And I'm not being a conspiracy. I'm not, sliding against the government, but I know if you think about the entire United States, every single city, major city, has an emergency manager. But how many of these cities actually experience disasters? Not many. You get the usual suspects like Houston, Tampa, the North Carolina coast, California, like the Los Angeles area. But all these other places, they don't. So they don't actually have the actual experience responding to disasters. In addition, it's the local authorities who are supposed to respond first, and then the state, and then the federal. And if they're not doing their job, or they're punting it because they think that, oh, well, the state will give us the money for this, so the state, or, oh no, the federal government will give us money for it. Those resources aren't there. So just assume you're on your own. And I like to tell students too, when a disaster first happened, who are your first responders? And they're like, firefighters, EMS. I was like, no, you and your neighbors.
Yes.
Because they're all affected too. Like, they have to get to their job. They're humans. They don't live in an invincible bubble. So the first people who are going to come to you are going to be you and your neighbors. And that's just what you have to deal with. What was the second thing I was going to say? Dang it. About risk, appreciating risk. Now, one of the things that I do not like, and I never liked it in the military, people love repeating phrases and terms that they don't know the definition of, that they hear, but they're also too ashamed to ask. Like, what does that actually mean? They're just going to assume from context. And when people talk about flood zones, for example, and floodplains, and it's a 1,000-year flood, that language was created by civil engineers for civil engineers. Who do you hear that from? Not civil engineers. You hear it from weather people, you hear it from politicians, you hear it from news people. They don't describe what that actually means. So it gives you a false sense of what is actually happening. So they say it's a 1 in 1,000-year flood. Two things to say about that. That is more probable than you think it is. Ellicott City, Maryland had 2 1,000-year floods 2 years apart in 2016 and 18. And then you have, even when Helene hit the United States, that was a 1,000-year flood. And then 2 weeks later, there was a 1,000-year flood in France. And then 2 weeks after that, there was a 1,000-year flood in Spain. So if we're pulling out globally, we had 3 1,000-year floods within a month.
Yeah.
So your risk is far higher than you think it is. Even if you don't live in a floodplain, guess what? Things that aren't in the floodplain flood. They just do. So be really understanding what your risk is, as opposed to being like, oh, 1,000 years, that'll never happen in my lifetime. It's going to happen 3 times in your lifetime. If you're a global citizen, it's going to happen, 2 years in a 2-year period lifetime if you live in Ellicott City, Maryland, and more possibly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is a great point. And floods are something that I'm thank goodness I have not had to be in one. and deal with because they're so destructive. And like you said, it could be 1,000-year flood, but it doesn't matter because it can happen again next year, and it
Mhm.
can happen the year after that. And if you're not prepared for it, it's just, I was down in Louisiana after Katrina, 4 or 5 years after Katrina, and people were showing me, because we were out on some tours out in the country, and showing how, okay, before Katrina, my house
Mhm.
was this high. After Katrina, my house is this high. And just the kind of things that you really need to think about before something like that
Yes.
happens, if
Yeah.
you want to prevent it. Because there are also houses we said, yep, the water was right up to the middle of the windows, and you're going, that thing is that high off the ground, and the water was up another 4 feet, 5 feet, whatever it was. And they say, yeah, this is, see the house beside it and why this that much taller. That's why we built it like that.
Well, I
Yeah.
think people also need to understand with probability, it's 1 in 1,000-year flood. Probability has amnesia, right? So it always starts at 1. So
Yeah.
it's oh, at the roulette wheel. I've done this in Vegas. I'm like, oh, it's hit you if you're betting red or black. It's the easiest bet to make, get the color. And it's like, oh, they've had 10 blacks in a row. Clearly, red. It's due for a red. Says who? Says who? It's
Mm-hmm.
probability. It doesn't work that way. It could be
Yeah.
black 50 times in a row. It's just the
Yes.
chance. It's just the chance.
Yes. So as you're helping people with this continuity planning,
Mhm.
what are some of the basic things that you where do you start? Where do we start with this?
So I always like to start with, well, I'll interview to figure out how big the actual business is, like how many people, what's the locations, how many locations are there? Because if we have different locations, then we have different geographical considerations. Even within the same city, you might have one location be up high in a hill, one next to a river. So
Mm-hmm.
there are different things to consider. And then I'll do an audit of the business to see what they have already, what their vendors are covering, how secure their vendors are, what their insurance policies cover, what their
Oh,
if they
yeah.
have a commercial rental property, I will look at that lease. And it's funny, actually, I wasn't looking for this particular thing, and it's because I was a lawyer, so I consider myself a recovering lawyer. I look for specific things in contracts, so I know what to look for. And I was looking for something specific that I learned to look for after Helene, because I used to walk around. There's nothing else to do. Everything was flooded, and then there's nowhere else to go, and all the streets were blocked off with trees and wires down for days. So I just started asking people on the street questions when they were doing like recovery type work, and I was like, oh, I should look at that. So this one client asked for their commercial lease just to look at one clause that I was looking for specifically. And in the lease, they also had the layout of the office. And I went, oh, that's interesting. Based on, I was like, one door in, this narrow hallway, windows that I guarantee don't open, and then a back wall. So one exit point. That's an active shooter risk in my mind because, from my time in Afghanistan, my brain is wired to see terrible things. So
Yeah.
then I went ahead and Googled the address and I put Google Maps Street View. Then I drove around with my finger. I was like, let me see what this building looks like. And I was like, okay, this many floors. And it's like, who else is in this building? I was like, oh, that person has a business. If their client was pissed off, they'd come in and shoot them. This person, if their client was pissed off, they'd come and shoot them. I was like, okay. And I told them this was well before what happened in Midtown Manhattan, a couple weeks ago. I was like, hey, based on your layout and based on who is in your building, I think you need to do some active shooter training. So that's like another thing. Like I'll look at all these things, and when I see the risk there, I'm telling you, ChatGPT can't figure that out. Right?
No,
So
no.
when I'm looking at stuff, I'm like, my brain is just saying, what else can go wrong? What else can go wrong? What else can go wrong? And then I'll do a follow-up interview with the client and be like, okay, this is what I read. I need you to confirm this is what you were thinking, because this is what I think you were thinking. And they're like, oh yeah, that was what I was thinking. Well, actually, this is what I was thinking. And then I do a report based off of that saying, here's what I think your current state is. Here's what your biggest risks are. Here's what you need to do moving forward. And then that's where we work from there.
When you're helping people do this, what are some of the things that they say, like the aha moments they have?
The eyes go wide, right? Sometimes they don't say anything. I've seen somebody's the blood drain from their face when I was asking what his biggest concerns were, and he said, "Oh, fishing." I said, "Okay," and then I said, "All right, for cyber stuff," and I said, "Okay, let's move on to your physical structure security." He goes, "We're good." I said, "Okay," and because I'm a lawyer at base, I know not to just accept an answer from a client without asking why.
Mhm.
And I went, okay, so do you have like a really robust plan? And he went, oh, no, we're fully remote. I went, uh-huh. So, are they all in your state? He's like, no, we're all throughout the United. I said, cool. Are they clustered anywhere? Houston, Tampa, North Carolina coast. Yeah, we have quite a few North Carolina coast. I said, cool. Do you know why I'm asking you? You went, no. I said, hurricanes. And you went, oh yeah, like 4 years ago, we had a really bad hurricane where for about 2 weeks, 10 of our staff couldn't work. I said, right. So remember you told me you didn't have to worry about a plan for a structure? And he goes, yeah. I go, you have 120 to worry about because you had 120 employees. And that's when I watched the blood drain from his face because he never considered that. And then when I asked a client who had their business did a lot of stuff in the cloud, and I said, so what happens if you lost your power and your internet? And the answer was, oh, we'd be screwed. Clearly something they hadn't thought of. And then like this person is like, well, I mean, what are the odds of that happening? I go, so I live in Asheville, right? I lost power, water, internet, phone all at once for days, if not weeks. So it can happen.
Yeah. And then that alone, that right there, power and internet, right? That's something we take for granted so much now that, and it does. I mean, you do, if you have a situation, it can be out for days or weeks.
Absolutely. Here, my power was out for 8 days and I got my internet back when my power came back. And then I didn't have potable water for about 15 days, any water for 15 days. I didn't have potable water for about 54 days. So I had to keep going. Like part of my daily task was to go and get the water from the water distro so I can have drinking water. Which definitely puts a crimp in your schedule for the day. It's like, oh, I got to get water again, which is kind of, yeah, but there's people take for granted that things are going to be there. Oh, the internet's going to be there. Oh, my phone's going to be there. And it's like, okay, let's have some fun. I'm going to take away your phone capabilities. What are you going to do?
Yeah, it is. Oh yeah. And it's getting more and more that we're more and more dependent on those things every day.
Yeah, that's unfortunately a big side effect of both expanding your business and making things more technological is you are designing out the redundancies. You're designing out the clunky stuff. The clunky stuff is what you need when you don't have the technical. So, files backed up onto a hard drive. Do you know how many people don't even back up their files to a hard drive anymore? Oh, it's in the cloud. It's in the cloud. Or like I had somebody who I advised who their business was purely 100% on Facebook. And I sent them a message and they never responded. And it was a month later. I'm like, well, they were kind of flaky anyway. So I was like, I don't know what the hell happened to that person. And then they wrote me a month later, like, oh my God, I was in Facebook jail and I couldn't contact anyone. I go, so remember when I told you to get your contacts off of Facebook and somewhere else? I'm like, how are your clients going to know that you're in Facebook jail and not that you're like, didn't just drop out of business? And guess what happens when that happens? Part of keeping your doors open and cash flowing is you're being available and being able to communicate what's going on. So with her business specifically, do you think those people, because she didn't contact anybody, she didn't have any of their information, do you think they waited for the month to? No, they went and brought their business elsewhere.
Yeah,
because they needed stuff to get done, and she was not available to do that.
Yeah, and you make a great point with such basic necessities anymore as electricity and internet. And I love your point about water too. People don't, on a daily basis, people don't understand how much water they actually use. And when people come to my house and see the 30 or 40 gallons of water I've got holed up out here just in case, they wonder why it's that way. And it's because that's not very long. I mean, and we don't understand that until it's not there. But in business, so we talked about this power, internet. What are some of the things, and we mentioned a bit about cyber, but how can someone actually get to a point where they go, okay, I've got some things in place. It seems like you get to a point where you go, I've addressed, at least the basic risks. And what are some indications that when you're talking to people and you go, wow, they do have a pretty good handle on it. What are the kind of things that they're telling you?
Well, that's an interesting question because I've never met a client that I was like, oh, they're completely good. I've met clients who I'm like, wow, they're really far along and they only
Yeah.
need one or two things, but the one or two things were massive. For
Okay.
example, one person, he's actually in your area. He is a survivalist type of person. So he's got 2 homes. He's got freeze-dried food in both of them that he swaps out as they're expiring and replaces them. He has everything. His redundancies within his business were also phenomenal. I even learned something from him based off of some of his redundancies. The problem is he didn't do succession planning.
That's a big one.
It is. And I was like, so what happens when you're incapacitated? He's like, well, I was like, it's a problem. I'm like, is your business in your will? And you're like, I should probably call my lawyer. I'm like, yeah. Yeah.
Those are one of the first questions I always ask people working with them. Not that I'm like anything continuity planning, just like because you don't want to get down the road with somebody and see that happen. And
Yeah.
so many people you see, because it could happen to any of us any day, and they've got a good business, they're rolling along, all of a sudden, boom, something happens. Could be a broke my leg, can't work for 2 weeks, could be way worse, right? And they don't think about it. And the half a dozen calls and getting things arranged can save your business.
Yeah, I actually, I used to say it a lot, that when I first started, now 4 years ago, the business continuity is a lot like estate planning. And you know, you want to have the stress off of your family and loved ones, both from having the estate figured out, having a healthcare proxy, having your DNR, because you do not want them making those decisions. If they have no idea what you want, number one, and two, just they're stressed. They're going to be under so much mental pain and anguish to have to even think about it. If it's already decided, it's not going to make it like hurt less, but at least they'll be less stressed about it. They'll know this is what we talk about. This is the plan. We're following the plan.
Yeah.
This has all been taken care of. Like, you know, and some people, I don't try to be a fear monger. And you know, what I say is you should protect your business. You built this thing. You should want to respect not just your business and the people who work for your business, but you respect the you that put in all those blood, sweat, and tears building your business. Give that person the respect. So, like, you know, 5 years down the road, they can go look back and be like, you know what? Thank you, me, for having thought of this. So I'm ready. This is good. This is not going to destroy my business. It's going to be a hiccup, and that's it because I prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It's just, those are the things that, so good. So when you're talking to people, or I guess I got a couple of questions I'm pulling up. I'm trying to see a few of them that I want to ask yet. Have you ever seen when a company has gone through these bad situations and really taken advantage of it? So we maybe didn't have as good a plan as we should have, but coming back from it made us a better company because of the challenge we've gone through.
Yeah, I would say there were a few businesses here in Asheville that learned that the hard way, though. A lot of them did not have continuity plans. So all the ones that put up GoFundMes did not have continuity plans. And some of the stuff that they did to pivot for next time, they learned lessons. The food and beverage industry specifically here, they learned a lot of lessons from COVID. And and then they were, you know, using those lessons, which was, you know, I do talk about this in the second book, where there was like a beautiful community, especially with the restaurants and the brewers, where it's like the brewers had water because they were in downtown Asheville and they weren't flooded. So they had water because it's part of the brewing process, but it wasn't fresh water. Like, it was in their vats that they already had. And they're like, we'll give this out so the restaurants can cook the food and give it away to everybody, because there was no way to cook. You know, most of Asheville, like downtown, didn't lose power for very long at all. So they're giving away all this water, saying it's fine when we get running water back. We have to boil it anyway to make it as part of our beer process, a part of our brewing process. They gave away all their water, but when the water came back, the non-pot, the running water, it was such poor quality, they couldn't even filter it enough to make the beer. So that they actually wound up being like, wow, we just screwed ourselves by being really generous. So next time they're going to be like, all right, we'll give away some, to be part of a good community member, but we do need to retain some in the event that what comes through those pipes, and we don't know when really clean water will be coming after. Like I told you, it was 15 days before I had running water, 54 before it was potable.
Yeah.
Able to be drank. That's a long time for a brewer to not be able to make beer.
Oh, God. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even went ahead and made agreements with the other brewers in Raleigh and Charlotte and to borrow some of their equipment. But there's like a 4 to 6 week lead time to make batches of beer. So
Yeah.
we also had figured that out. I mean, things that they wish they would have done earlier. That's the key. Wished you would have done earlier. Do it earlier.
Yes. If you wish, that's a great. If you run into, wish you would have done it earlier, you need to do it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. When you're doing this, how do you prioritize? How do you prioritize? There's all these different risks that we could look at.
Mm-hmm.
How do you really prioritize them when you're sitting in there talking with someone?
So the first thing is I look at the mission of the business to make sure that we're looking to make sure that that is what happens. So again, I'll give you an example from Asheville that's also in the book. Manna Food Bank, their mission was to cure food insecurity in West North Carolina. They did not save their food. They put their food on a higher level because they weren't expecting the flooding to be as bad as it was, but they moved all their food trucks. They moved all the delivery trucks. And I said to the guy, why didn't you put the food on the trucks when you moved the trucks? He's like, I didn't think about it. I didn't think of it. So when I say you look at your mission, just because it's the most money you spent on an asset doesn't make it the thing that was most valuable. So as a food warehouse, it receives donations and it distributes it. So it thinks it's a logistics company, which you need a warehouse and trucks for. They thought those were the two biggest assets. But having a warehouse and having a truck does not make you any closer to, curing food insecurity. Having food does. The warehouse and the trucks are the nice to haves. So if they would have looked at the food as the goal, they're like, okay, well, we're going to do the food. We need that. We do something with the food. Oh, shoot, we got trucks. Let's put the food on the trucks and move the trucks. They didn't think that way. So one of the things is I look at the mission and the impact that any kind of disruption will have on achieving that mission. And it's really about the impact. Because I even did an exercise with somebody. It was a terrorist attack exercise. It was at Christmas time. So I was like, so you're in the 3rd floor of the Nakatomi building. And, on the 24th floor, there is a Christmas Eve party, terrorists show up, blah, blah, blah. So clearly I'm using Die Hard as like my model. And we went through what they would do for their operations and whatnot. And the guy at the end was like, okay, great. I'm secure on what I need to do for a terrorist attack. But what's the likelihood of that happening? I went, no, I did not prepare you for a terrorist attack. I prepared you for an event that is going to impact your ability to access your main operation center. It's about the impact. So I look at what's possible, what's the likelihood of it, what is the impact? And I concentrate and focus on impact. And that's why I direct my clients to do too.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it, because some of the things you might pay a lot of attention really don't, as far as impact your overall mission, might not be what you really want to be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be something as simple as the food is the real value rather than the truck or the warehouse or the equipment inside of it or anything.
They couldn't save. They're going to lose the warehouse anyway. And that's the thing. When I was trying to figure out what I could have told people other than don't put your business next to a river when Helene happened, it was a few days later when the New York Times did a reel of the business owners in the River Arts District who went and explored their premises for the first time since the storm. And somebody said, nobody told us it would be more than 10 feet. And I was like, who are you listening to? Like, who are your people? Because I knew it was going to be more than 20 feet days before, because I was paying attention to all the weather reports that the experts are putting out. They call for catastrophic flooding, 20 feet or greater. I knew that. If they were my clients, I would have told them on that Wednesday, whatever you're doing now to prepare, stop. It's not going to work. I need you to do 2 things. Accept you're going to lose your building, and get out of your building what you need most that you cannot replace that'll help you start somewhere afresh, or start, but not completely from scratch after this is over, doing something else. And I'm like, that would have been so easy if they just would have had access to that information, or from the right people who knew to tell them that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to your last book, When the Shit Hits the Fan, a little bit, because we're obviously talking about Asheville a lot, and it came from that. What are some of the things that you saw there that, I mean, well, because we've talked about some of them, but this is a great point. It's like staying abreast of current information, even like on that situation. But what are some of the things that really surprised you in this, or that could have really helped people a lot more, like you mentioned?
Well, first of all, business continuity could have helped them a lot more, because one of the things, and I'm not saying that to be, an opportunist idiot. There is a grant from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation in coordination with FedEx that if you are a small business and you have a business continuity plan, you register with them in advance. If you are ever in an area that's declared a presidential disaster and you experience disaster or damage, they will send you $5,000 to recover. Now, to some people, that doesn't sound like much. To everybody throwing up those GoFundMes, that would have made a world of a difference, especially even just to keep their staff paid going forward. So the fact that they didn't have the continuity plans really, I thought was really a horrible just fact that really hurt them. The way that certain things were taken care of, I was not aware of how bad our infrastructure was. So I prepared for no food, for no power, no water for about 3 to 4 days. I had more. I was able to stretch after that, but I was able to escape for a couple of days once the road opened. And I actually had a pre-planned vacation that I was able to go on, which is a 4-hour drive away to Charleston. And just knowing that even when you prepare, like, you may not be prepared enough. That doesn't mean you shouldn't not prepare, but also prepare for just the mental impact that it's going to have on you. Because when I got to Charleston, I took a shower and I was like, I'm going to go out and get me a beer and some lunch. And as I was walking down like King Street, I wanted to pass out on the street and fall asleep. And I'm like, why are you so tired? And I realized my adrenaline had been running so much from survival mode that I was like, oh God. And me, a prepper who was ready, started prepping 2 days in advance of the storm. You have no idea. And you have to give yourself and everybody else around you enough grace just to understand the mental impact of having a kind of disruption. Because, in my first book, I talk about, after COVID, the number one asset, there was a paradigm shift. The number one asset in businesses were the employees. Somebody said to me recently, don't you want to change that because with AI and blah, blah. And I go, no, I don't want to change that, because you still need a human touch. But also understand, like, we go back to active shooters. If you are in a mall and one of the stores in your mall is the victim or target of an active shooter, it doesn't mean that you're going to be hunky-dory, going home and work just fine and be able to show up to work fine the next day. Even being that close to something that traumatic is going to have a massive impact on you. And you have to prepare for your operations to be downgraded a little bit just to give people that ability to show up and be there. Because even with myself, I had a work project due that I missed the deadline of because I had no power, no water or internet. And I let them know and they go, it's fine, you can hand in 2 weeks late. I should have just declined that altogether and be like, you know what, I can't do this. I forced myself to do it. I turned in a product. I couldn't even focus when I was doing it. It was a terrible product. And the result I got from it was also terrible. So, just being aware of your own limitations.
Yeah.
That's another thing.
Yeah. Cause like you said, when you're in survival mode, you really don't know how hard that is on you.
Right. And then the other thing about Asheville specifically, everybody was talking about recovery. And I was like, look, recovery is not it. Recovery brings you back to where you were, and that's it. Resilience allows you to move forward. And they were focusing only on recovery. And I'm like, no, let's do better. Let's think 5-10 years down the road, not let's get you back so you're good from where you were. That's not the way to do it. And that's a lot of the people what they're focusing on. And I was trying to help something with Asheville, and they're like, oh, we have a lot of people who have experience with hurricanes, so I think we're good. And I'm like, there are other things, right, that can happen. It's not just hurricanes. Like, don't just don't have such a myopic view on certain things. Understand that the things that can mess you up are far broader. Like, again, it's not the terrorist attack, it's the event that's going to disrupt your operation. So if you're just preparing them for the minutia, you're going to miss the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that is the one thing that you've talked about a few times in here that really sticks with me is like, don't focus on a flood or a hurricane or a tornado or a fire. Focus on what could disrupt our operations and how do we have any of those and how do we really prevent that from hurting us as much. And putting things in place to do that rather than focusing on fire and just going, okay, like I had someone in California tell me a couple of years ago that I've got 200,000 gallons of water around my property now. If it gets close, douses my whole place with water for I forget how many hours, blah, 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 blah. And the flames will be by. And I'm thinking, well, that doesn't do a lot of good in other situations now after talking to you.
Right. Well, so I think the important thing you said is we want to prepare so it doesn't hurt us as much. And I think that's key because I never tell anybody, I will guarantee you 100% you are going to be protected from everything. I guarantee I'm going to give you the best shot at success with the least amount of discomfort to surviving that thing.
Yeah.
The best chance at success with the least amount of discomfort to surviving that thing. Because if I told you, oh, you're good, you're golden, don't do business with me because I'm lying.
I love how you said that. I'll give you the best chance of surviving, you know, and it's really in the tough situations where we should feel good that we survive with the least amount of disruption we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's been great talking with you, Erika, and just really diving into the, you know, business continuity planning. And if people want to get your two books, the second one is When the Shit Hits the Fan. That came out in March this year. Your first one is, tell us that one again.
How to Not Kill Your Business.
How to Not Kill Your Business, both available on Amazon. And if someone wants to get a hold of you and talk with you about business continuity planning, Erika, what is the best way to do so?
You can email me at info@eaasc.com, or you can call and leave a message or speak to me if I happen to answer at the time. My number is 828-708-7712. You could also go to my website. It's a clearinghouse for a lot of things. I have a blog there. There's a business readiness assessment. So if you're like, I'm curious if I'm ready, go to the homepage, scroll down the bottom, business ready assessment. It's like a Cosmo quiz, mostly A's, mostly B's, mostly C's. And that's www.eaasc.com.
Nice. Well, thanks for being here today, Erika. And again, we had Erika Andresen here today talking about building resilient operations with business continuity planning. Had tons of great examples, and it's so great when we can talk with someone like you, Erika, that's been out there and really helping people do this. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks so much for being here today. I know I could see we got the viewers there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us today. We will be back again next week. Erika, hang out offline and we will finish up offline. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.